All right, hopefully we're live. It tells us we're live. Hey guys, how's it going? Don, you were just saying it's cold where you are. Did you say 40 degrees? I don't know that is in Celsius, but...
It is about 35, 40 degrees this morning. It's too cold. I don't like it.
Well, soon we'll be off to Vegas, where I think it's going to be warmer, I'm assuming.
It'll be warm during the day, but at night it will be cold. So if you do have your 10-year jacket, I suggest you bringing it.
Do you know what? I've heard about this jacket. Alex, do you have the jacket? Or was it someone else told me about the jacket? There's like someone told me there was a jacket that got 10 years. Was it you?
I believe so. Did you get one, Alex?
No, but I was talking about the jacket that you get if you have a certain amount of certifications, I think.
Oh,
is that the golden one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I don't got that one. This one was a reInvent 10-year anniversary jacket. It's very nice. They went all out for this.
Yeah. I think I've seen it when I was on someone else's podcast. And I was very jealous. But apparently I'm going to get a peer talk jacket. So if you're going to reInvent, have a look on the app. There's a peer talk option, and you can request time with myself or Aaron Adele, who was on the other week, and we get a cool jacket. So don't be too jealous of our swag.
Nice.
All right, let's get into it. So welcome everyone to Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Stephanie Gooch, and I am a senior commercial architect at AWS. Alex?
My name is Alex Head, and I run the optics team, which Steph is on, at AWS, all things optimization for our strategic customers.
And we've got John with us today, who is host of an amazing podcast, on my podcast. But John, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name's John Meyer. I'm the chief content creator of Meyer Media. I'm also the host behind the John Meyer podcast, where we humanize the people behind the brand, where I capture the stories not only of the personal, but an actual corporate story that has helped or changed their lives in some way. Alex, Steph, thank you so much for having me on here.
So glad to have you. And you can check out, I'm going to drop a link to the podcast on Spotify, but you can check out some episodes that me and Alex have done recently. Already, we've say ourselves, very good. But one of the topics that me and John spoke about the other week was about getting started in cost optimization in the cloud. And so we wanted to extend this conversation into our Twitch show. And we're going to talk a bit about kind of the cost optimization elements to it, but also some stuff that we don't necessarily always talk about. So that could be things like security and also developing skills. So excited to get into that. Before we jump into it, a couple of reminders. Like we were just saying, we're going to go to reInvent. So if anyone's going, come by. John, where's your booth people can come see you at?
Well, actually, they can sign up. We'll drop a link, or I'll share a link with everybody. We are at Vidara. You can follow us even if you're not there or on site. We have live streaming, not only multiple YouTube channels, websites, LinkedIn, Twitter. We're on 8 syndications. We will be at Vidara, but you can either join us there or watch us live.
Awesome. And everything as always will be in the show notes when we put this up on YouTube. But also, yeah, me and Alex will be there. We'll be at the kiosk. We've got a bunch of talks going on. So come by.
And if you find us, if you track us down, we will have Twitch keys to AWS Optimization stickers, one of a kind. So track us down and grab those. I think last year I had them. I told very few people I had them. And all the people who found me commented that I was taller than they thought. So maybe just look for the unexpected tall person, and there I am.
I was probably one of those people that came, but I didn't get a sticker. I think you have to hold the sticker for me.
I'll save you a sticker. Don't worry. Only if you wear your optics shirt.
Oh, I will have to pack that. I'm actually already starting packing for reInvent because of all the gear I got to bring, and I make sure things. So I will bring my optics shirt.
Awesome. And yeah, definitely looking out to give out some stickers. Will be exciting. But come say hi. I'm not tall, I'm very short, so you'll probably lose me in the crowd, but I'm sure I'll be one of the females that you can find. So look out for us. Okay, let's get into this conversation of kind of getting started with the cloud. And John, kind of when you were thinking about this, you were kind of talking about setting the scene for having a new AWS account. So what kind of frame of mind do you think people who are watching should be in, and when should they kind of tune into this video?
So I want to kind of step back just for a little section and tell everybody I have a huge passion around AWS and cost optimization, including cloud optimization. I like sharing a lot of this information and stories we find to help everybody understand the services that are available to them. Now, one of the things that I want to share with everybody is like, when you start and sit down, um, you have these discussions in your company, right? And what your AWS account structure looks like, your billing, maybe your sharing, your network, how you want to deploy things out, how you want to give out access. And that's really where I want to kind of jump into like Control Tower and how it came about and why to utilize it.
Awesome. Because I don't think we've ever actually spoken about Control Tower on the show, unless it's one where I've been there. But yeah, John, do you want to give us an overview of Control Tower and how it kind of sits in the world of optimization?
Yeah, so let's talk about Control Tower and how it actually kind of got started. In a summary, what is Control Tower? And what it does is it takes all the best practices around organization, security, governance, compliance, and it wraps them up into a well-architected multi-account deployment. And I have to tell you, now it happens in under 30 minutes. When I originally deployed this out, and the premise to this was AWS Landing Zone, it was about an hour and a half to about 2 hours.
Oh wow, it's definitely. I remember when it first came out. I think it might have been at the room I was at. It feels like it's come a long way. Where this is like the default now. Before, people were they already had the organization set up, and then they had to kind of move to it. But then now it's just like the default thing. You start off doing it. Alex, do you see a lot of customers with Control Tower set up?
Hit or miss. I mean, I think more recently for sure. But I think a lot of it is just realizing how it goes into that overall culture that we talk about so frequently, right? And I'm not sure that we highlight that a ton. I mean, at least we have it on the show. So I think having examples of where to get started, and then a lot of times once people kick it off, they realize even more things that they can do with it.
I think they don't see or understand like the full power and capabilities of Control Tower, because when it originally started as Landing Zone, I think it was back in 2017, it was actually a CloudFormation template that you can get off of an S3 bucket. It wasn't publicized as much, and it was still in its like beta stages. But if you got a hold of it and you were able to deploy it, I was one of the originals that actually had a chance to deploy this out. There's so much available to you and all the controls. The only downside was it had to be set up net new. Now Control Tower has come a long way where you can integrate existing accounts into it. You can pull everything in. You can convert an account to it. So this is where a lot of the cost structure comes in mind and the visibilities. The whole thing around Control Tower is that it puts guardrails in place, not blockers. You're allowed to run until you hit a guardrail, not only for security, but there's so much value and cost optimization for individual accounts that we can talk about.
Yeah, and just to shout out someone who's watching who's just said like Control Tower and Lifesaver, but then recently, especially in Australia, so they've recalibrated their entire AWS stack to deal with this. So just from someone else's mouth, this is a really good place to start. So yeah, do you want to? You mentioned kind of there are lots of good things about it that people aren't really aware of. Do you want to give us some highlights of things that you recommend people to kind of focus in on, especially around optimization?
Yeah, so when you guys set up Control Tower, you have a number of default accounts that are set up from like your billing, your network, your shared services, and an individual account, your main payer account as well. Some of the things that are available to you just on even a deployment thing is the service control policies. And these allow those individual accounts and limitations for you to not only from a security perspective, because we're going to try to talk about that a little bit, but from a cost optimization and utilizing certain instances or certain regions that you can deploy to. So the power behind it of allowing to push this out from not only individual accounts, but to all your accounts, or you don't want certain instances to be run within individual accounts, really comes into play when you're looking at what can be utilized from an individual standpoint and a deployment.
Yeah, I really like suggesting customer service control policies, because this happened recently where a customer's like, we're expanding, we kind of want to not control developers, because you want to allow them to be innovative, whatever it is, innovate, and what SCPs prevent you from doing is making big mistakes. But Alex, have you seen a lot of customers do that?
Yeah, I'd say there's a healthy balance, right? You don't want to, the whole point of being on the cloud is fast development and moving quickly. And so you don't want to put a level of restriction on people where they can't move quickly. But let's think of it from a cost optimization standpoint. Like if we're saying what John was suggesting, what instances people are using, maybe people shouldn't be using original generation or, past generation, things that we know for a fact really don't have a ton of use case anymore to use. And so, instead of thinking it of restricting, it's more of protecting from that, making a more cost-saving mistake for the long run, and helping set up for success for people who maybe haven't built a ton on AWS before.
Yeah, I also like, John, you mentioned the regions and the amount of times, different kind of situation, but amount of times customers will call me and say, I've deployed something and I can't find it, and it's costing me money and I don't understand what's going on, or I've deployed a cloud formation and I can't figure out where my resources, and they're in the wrong region. Having people prevented from accidentally deploying stuff in the wrong region is probably really important, because I remember looking at other customers and being like, why have you got some spend in a region that you've never mentioned you used before, and they didn't know it was happening? So kind of this preventative method is really great. I'm going to drop a link into some tech policies as well. Go on, Alex.
I'd also say too, and I know that we've talked to John about this, I think on at least one of the podcasts, but there's things that you can put in place that will directly save, right? And bring those cost savings to an organization. There's things from a resiliency standpoint that you can put in place that save long-term, right? That save from mistakes being made, that save from, if you're like how you're deploying something, having it in the right amount of regions, having the right access to it. And so when you look at, and a lot of times internally, we will, instead of saying cost optimization, say we're trying to make the customer more efficient. And that really applies too to the process around it and how they have that movement of building on AWS.
I think, Alex, you touched on it earlier about utilizing those older generation instances, and I hope we're going to talk about it later with regards to skills and understanding those instances. But in a lot of cases, AWS releases new instance types and people need to be aware of these. Well, you don't want them to use this new instance type and deploy it out as infrastructure code anymore. You want it to be, listen, you need to use newer ones. Why? This one works. Well, it's more cost effective and efficient to utilize newer ones. Or I don't want you to deploy out this type of instance, service limits, quotas that come into play. These are all things that you can enable through Control Tower. You can actually take a lot of these and either limit or expand on them depending on the type of account and utilization.
I think the main, because I know we want to talk about some other bits as well, but if you are new to kind of setting up your organization, check out Control Tower and see what it can enable you to do. I really think that deploying these control policies is really important, but make sure you're educating other people why they're there. That's a big thing. You want to, like these guys are saying, you don't want to stop people from actually deploying anything and then them come kind of yelling back at you. You want to make sure that there's a lot of education, which John, you're right, we'll talk about in the skills session. Okay, so we've talked about Control Tower. What else? I mean, there are a couple of big hitters that we could probably run through that we mentioned all the time, but John, what are some things that if someone was to come up to you at the event and say, hey, I've just started, what should I do in my account? What would you recommend?
Some of the things that I would recommend for setup in an account, immediately the CUR file, right? We've all been talked about it. Everybody's been, there's a right way to set it up for integration and automation. Actually, Steph, you educated me on one of my podcasts on how to set it up and using the Parkex format and the automation behind it and, implement it. I did that. I set up a brand new account and I'm actually doing a series on it where I deployed out a new AWS account and I haven't deployed a single resource in it. And I want to do and follow through these steps. Now, these are not step 1, step 2, step 3. These are steps that you should do before you deploy out a resource, the CUR file, budgets, alerts, things that you can be more efficient around. And Control Tower can actually enable these, but these are defaults that should be enabled so that you have full visibility into your accounts.
So that's the CUR is always a great shout, and I've just popped a link in there about getting set up. The thing that John's talking about is this YAML file that is given to you in your bucket when you deploy a new support, which a lot of customers don't do, and then will set up things themselves, which is also fine, but it gives you the kind of all the configurations you need, and you don't have to worry about your callers being up correctly, your roles being set up correctly. So it's a nice kind of handy way. And also it means that if you make changes, so for example, if you add a new tag into your account, this someone emailed us from the show. Also, as a reminder, people, if you are interested in follow-up questions, email us at costoptimization@amazon.com. Someone emailed and they just had a question about, I can't see my tags in my CUR, and it was because they hadn't updated their table definition in a while, and so they use that CloudFormation template to do that. So definitely go and check that out. But go through to Alex. Any other things that you would set up after the CUR?
It's a loaded question.
Wait. I got one for you, Alex. How important,
Okay.
and Steph and I had this, so I'm going to buy you some time a little bit. Steph and I had this discussion. How important is tagging?
Oh, well, speaking of reInvent, my first reInvent talk that I did was on cost allocation and tagging. And I think it's as important as the prioritization that you put on it. If I were to just say go tag, I would say it's going to be a waste of your time. If you're going to put in forth structure around that tag, and my usual recommendation is pick maybe 3 mandatory things. And those can be like, is this a production or non-production? Is this a 24/7 resource, or maybe potentially could be schedule, something like that. But just telling people to tag, you're going to end up with a mess. So I think that tagging is important, but tagging is important if you're ready to put in a structure around that tag.
So tagging for cost optimization, I know the data lifecycle manager requires the tagging for your backups and stuff, but if you're isolating, utilizing control tower for a specific account, is tagging really necessary? Steph, sorry, I didn't mean to take it over. I know we have this conversation.
Yeah, I was just like, I just feel that. You can tell John's a pro podcaster and has his own show. Super. No, I like it. It's fun. My opinion is always, guys, if you have an account that's called like one account per application per environment, don't waste your time tagging. I agree. Alex's good point about the resource information about whether it's 24/7 and that kind of the lower information, but stuff that you can generalize at the account level, like, waste your time. And because that's how I feel about tagging. I think it's relevant to a case. But also, like the John was saying, we went into detail about this conversation on his podcast. So again, like shout out to listen into it. But yeah, the other thing we're talking about, I also think around cost optimization, start off with setting up budgets is a key thing. I think a lot of customers are getting more interested in learning about this. John, budgets? Are you a fan?
So budgets, I agree with. I actually set up a bunch of those from my personal account and tested up with them. If you set up a budget and you don't set up an alert to notify you on the budget, it's actually kind of pointless because you're not going to go into console to do it. I think you need a notification method that's not going to get buried behind other notifications. If you want to utilize and integrate it into Slack or email, there has to be an action behind it. Not, great, I got my email and I'll look at it whenever I get a chance, because ultimately that chance will happen a week later and you're thousands of dollars over now.
Yeah. The one that oh, shout out in chat, someone said one thing you have mentioned is budgets, but now and then as they said that I'd already said budgets, so Steph is in my brain. I am. Okay, awesome. But there's a couple of things I think we've had out there for cost, but especially one of the reasons you want to get John on is because he brings a different perspective to the stuff that we normally talk about. So one thing that you brought up when we were chatting before was about the skills development, that when we will move to the cloud, that they should make sure that they're not just moving kind of arbitrarily and kind of trying different things. So when you start out with thinking about skills and education, are there places that you point people directly to first, or services or tools that you like to suggest?
So AWS offers, and I have to use their term, a breadth and depth of educational tools that are available to you immediately on their website, right? You can go there. There's a lot of free stuff. There's workshops like workshop.io is one available. I think it's AWS workshop.io, but for skills that you can go in to educate yourself on around cost optimization and governance. There's so many free things. There's AWS user groups. You can follow me on YouTube. I always suggest some cost optimization stuffs, but I am not the go-to deep factor for it. There are so many people out there that spend so much time doing this, like Steph and Alex, who run this show and they educate you on it. So use the tools that are available, but also there's some great paid stuff. I think education is a continuous thing for AWS and cloud because it's always changing.
I think that's an important thing to call out. A lot of times people will look at cost optimization or cloud financial management. And I think John on our team, who's been on not this John, another John on our team who's been on the show before, told me
Wait, I
this
just got
exact
back
quote
to the
last week.
team.
I know, right? But it's, a lot of times we'll go into customers and they think of like cloud financial management or optimization as this 3-month project fix, move on. But it has to be seen as that ongoing change into the culture as you would view security, right? You're like always seeing security as top of mind. And one of the greatest parts about being in this space is that, and I tell all of our new hires this, is if you feel behind when you start, know that to stay up to date, we all have to continuously learn and challenge each other to learn. New things are happening, new things are coming out daily, and new opportunities. And so it's really like, where are you kind of consistently getting that information? Definitely, following, I'll plug all three of us on LinkedIn. I think we all post pretty frequently. Aaron Adele, who's been on the show before as well, he's great at posting updates that have come out. We also, I'm sure there's different Twitter handles too that are good to follow on that standpoint, but it is about ongoing information and ongoing education from that standpoint.
And utilizing the tools that are there readily available to you. People are great. And the other thing is that AWS has a number of services that are built into the console to help you learn about them, but also to utilize them and make you aware of some of these things that need to be done.
Yeah, I'm trying to dig up our cost bot that John, is that what John has done on the show? I'm trying to, John Martin, too many Johns. That has it. I'll see if not, I'll put it in the show notes. But that's a great way. Like Alex said, there's so many announcements. Like GP3 for RDS came out the other day. Unfortunately, not a big cost saving, but performance-wise is a big improvement. So check that out. And there is a lot of things that you it's hard to keep track of. I've handily got the Twitter handle. But I think things like watching Twitter and stuff like that can be quite tiring sometimes, and there's a lot of data that changes. Is there any cases that either of you found in terms of like ways, apart from maybe the labs, if there's any other resources that you've used to kind of learn about new stuff or upskill in general? I think when you mentioned skills, is that skills.io, Amazon?
I think one of the resources that I utilize is I'll use third-party tools for educational and, kind of going towards and, keeping myself up to date on a lot of the services, without plugging a couple of those, like ACOG Guru is a great one to go to. The education, the authors are on there. Pluralsight's another one. You can go to those and, you're looking towards, if you want to go for a certification, and understanding those services that are there is always great because they're always updating it. Alex, you mentioned it. It's a continuous education and improvement. Cost savings is not a once and done. It's not an act. It's not your achievement or a milestone that you're trying to go towards. What you're doing is every day you're learning something new. AWS, an example, this was back in 2019. AWS had reserve instances, spot instances, and then they released savings plans. And you had to educate you on the value of those and whether you were going towards savings plans versus reserve instances. What were the use cases that you would do those? Why? How could you manage those? And you can't do those individually. There's no spreadsheet method for you to manage reserve instances efficiently. You have to use tools that are available, not only internal to AWS, in the console, there's third-party tools. You have to find out the one that works best for you and your company. And this is what's ultimately going to help you. You are educating yourself and you're helping your company at the same time.
And just to throw a kind of curveball question in for both of you, when in a customer's journey, and this will be the same for everyone, when should they start to consider buying savings plans or RIs? Alex, do you want to jump first?
Oh, I mean,
it's tricky question. That's why I did it.
Well, you know what? One thing that has come top of mind as we've all been talking about this is, I think that like when probably the three of us got into this world of cost optimization before the term FinOps really existed, it was about like what the plan was for your organization. And now FinOps and cloud financial management has really become a career path for people, and like how we define that. And so I think that there's so many different ways that you can utilize savings plans. If you're going to do like an overall company like game plan around them, I think it's seen a little bit differently. But I've also seen some people have, ways that they handle RIs and SPs as kind of an ongoing part of their daily movement. And that works really well too. And so it's interesting to see how, I see it different as like the individual who's kind of learning around this space versus the organization and what stage they're in.
I think for RIs, when you understand where you're at, and if you have infrastructure or resources that are constant, as long as you're kind of growing and being able to utilize those are great. Going in, and you can actually supplement either or, like an overlap, reserve instances, and then have savings plans to cover it. And then spot instances on top of that, if you know how to account for when they're going to be utilized or removed. There's some new releases that happened around spot allocation and capacity that AWS did that's actually really cool, and I was diving into. But going back to savings plans, when you have a commitment and you understand that you can commit to those, not only those compute, those EC2 or SageMaker resources, and understand that you can get the most out of it through a period of time, then that's going to come into play. It's all about understanding, like Ali said, where your company's at the time. If you're continuously growing right now, month over month, it might be good to kind of look at those for a 1 or 3 year reserve instances, or go with savings plans.
Nice. And someone's asking in the chat, can you guys briefly touch on the use case of savings plans versus RIs? We only have 3 minutes left. This time has flown by. But I can jump in and start with, I would always say anything to do with EC2, you want to focus on savings plans, if it's compute or if it's instance, depends on your kind of utilization. And then reserved instances focus on all those other services that use them. So RDS, my mind has gone blank. DynamoDB. I'm trying to think, what other one? SageMaker? Am I missing any? Well, I don't do RDS and savings plans that much.
Fargate's in there, right?
Fargate.
Yep.
Fargate. There you go. So yeah, so definitely I would split those two up. I don't know if you guys have any other comments on that.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think with reserved instances, there's just, like you said, there's certain things that only reserved instances or have reserved instances as that opportunity. Savings plan is usually where I lean, because it just gives you flexibility to modernize and change what you're doing, and they apply to more things. And I think that there's a specific show that we did on that strategy that I found some like new ways to look at it as well. So I think Steph can drop the link, and I would suggest looking at that too.
I think with the flexibility with reserve instances, and throughout the entire account, like savings plans, you have it through your main payer account, and it trickles down to individual accounts and where you tie them to and where you purchase them. Savings plans, Alex, I think you touched on it really great, is that it allows you to modernize. Where's your flexibility in these, how you want to move things around and account for them? You don't have to pick maybe a specific instance, but you can just do compute in general. So you have a huge flexibility throughout everything.
Nice. All right, thanks, guys. So we've covered a bunch of good things. Hopefully, you have found something interesting and maybe new you hadn't considered when it comes to starting out on your AWS journey. If you would like to hear more stories, I'd also want to shout out at reInvent, if you're going, we're doing a Peer Connect event, and there's still a couple of spaces left. And so recommend checking that. And that's where you hear more from other customers, not just people who work at Amazon, people who have worked at Amazon. And so they're more kind of experience sharing opportunity that I just wanted to shout out before we finish. All right, that is all from us today. Thank you so much for watching. Next week, we're going to be we've got another nice little kudos episode from the Cloud Intelligence Dashboard, looking at the hidden gems. So there are some pinpoint things and maybe you haven't noticed in the dashboard before. Thank you, Alex, and we'll see you all next week.